Hey everyone, welcome to the studio today. Today is, I've lost total track, I don't know, day 5, day 6, day whatever it is, of Open Studios. So the purpose of these videos, for those of you new to them, is just that during this time of self-isolation and self-reflection, we're able to find time to I guess it's carve out time more than find time, but to carve out time to honor our creative sides. And it reminded me a little bit today that ever since I became like a serious artist, hi Terry, ever since I became a more serious artist, a professional artist, I'm always meeting people at events. And if you don't exist in a corporate world or in a world where your job seems, I don't know, a little bit frivolous maybe, or maybe just, I don't know, like you're just having fun, sometimes you don't even take yourself seriously if you don't think that others are taking you seriously. And it just reminded me of being at parties, and I was going to say cocktail parties, but I don't even know. I can't remember the last time I put on heels and went to a cocktail party. But even just being at events where you're meeting people for the first time, and then you tell them when they say, "Oh, so what do you do?" And you say, "I'm an artist." And sometimes you see that look on their face and it kind of glazes over, and then they'll tell you about a relative that they know that's an artist, or they'll tell you about how they can't draw a stick man, or they'll turn it back on themselves, because as you may be well aware, we're always mirroring who we are, and people don't know how to relate in that situation when you say, "I'm an artist." If we were to be honest with ourselves, those people who say that they don't have a creative bone in their body, or that they can't draw a stick man, or whatever it may be, if they were honest with themselves and you were to ask them, what is your creative outlet, I bet you that given any amount of time, people could come up with the thing that they find themselves being the most creative in. And that's what I am encouraging people to do with carving out some time daily. In my case, it's Open Studio, but in your case, maybe it's just realizing that you do have a creative outlet, and that, hi Denise, that you do have a creative outlet, but you're just not honoring it. So anyone I've been talking to that I know does scrapbooking or baking or whatever it is you do, that is your creative outlet. And our daily challenges or our daily topics revolve around exploring and honoring creative time during this time of self-isolation and world upside down, whatever you want to call it. It's weird, it's unprecedented, nobody knows what to do at this time. I've had a lot of comments from people telling me that they feel stuck, they feel they're in ruts, they feel they don't know what to do. And I say honor that. That makes sense. I mean, we are stuck. We are, in a place right now that we don't know how to behave. So, but the one thing we can control is how we react to things. And so for me, one of my dedications to you is to carve out at least 1 hour every day where we can just forget about anything we have to do or need to do, or maybe it's on your list of what you're doing during this time. I don't know, but it's carving out that time that is just for you. So even if you can't, for those of you new joining us, thank you. For those of you who can't do this right now alongside with me, then just watch the replay later, but just make sure you're carving out time for you, right? You need to carve out time for you to create your art, and to whatever that art form may be, right? We're talking about creativity here. We're not necessarily talking about painting. It just so happens I'm a painter and a more intuitive painter, so that's why I'm not really giving instruction. But I had, oh hi from Nevada. Look at that, we have Susie Blue from Nevada. That's the first time we've had someone watching from Nevada, so welcome, that's wonderful. I think most of the viewers so far have been Canadians, from the East Coast to the West Coast, and welcome USA, that's wonderful. So wherever you find yourselves today, the purpose of these videos is to just get people honoring creativity and carving out time daily to act in creative ways. So I'm going to continue to work on this painting, which our topic yesterday was start something differently. So if you are an artist, what we normally do is we have our go-tos. We have the way we always start a painting, or the way we always start writing a song or a poem or whatever it is. But yesterday the challenge was try to do something differently. And so I normally start with a whole bunch of collage, cover it with paint, and then I make these intuitive scratches and marks and everything else. Now the thing is, I've been doing my craft, my art for so long that I already knew ahead of time the pitfalls that were going to become of this painting, right? Like, so when I was talking myself through it yesterday, I just had to keep telling myself, like, just be quiet, and just go with the flow and honor your own challenge, which is just to discover something new about yourself and to see if you can hear your creative muse at different times than we have come to expect to hear our muses. So it was interesting for me. I'm going to turn the camera just a wee bit so we can see the painting so that I can refer to this a little bit. Oh, look at that. My little tripod's being very stubborn. So the way I normally start, right, is a whole bunch of collage, and I don't put imagery in at the beginning of a painting because to me I find that it cripples me in a way that this area becomes precious and I don't feel freedom within my painting to create. Pardon me, I swallowed the wrong way. Sorry, coughing into a microphone, I'm sure that's entirely annoying. Apologies. And I'm about to drink my paint water here to try and clear it, so pardon me. Anyway, so exactly what I predicted was going to happen in this painting happened, right? I came in this morning and I looked at it and I'm like, ah. So this area feels to me like no matter what I do to this painting, it can't be abstract, it can't be free, it can't be, I can't watch it evolve because I've already somewhat crippled it for myself. I've created a subject, if you will, and it doesn't matter if I want to make this painting about an elk walking through an abstract background. It's there, it's happening, and that's what it is. And I have to tell you that in order to honor my creativity, I have to be willing to abandon this. So that means I'm just going to paint today with complete intuitive guidance. So that just means if I feel like putting white on top of it, I put white on top. If I feel like putting black on it, I'll put black on it. If I feel like collaging something else over top of it, I will. So for anyone who's ever taken a workshop with me, you'll know that I'm always cautioning people about starting with the subject matter, and for that whole purpose that I just explained, but the main reason being that I'm already bored with this painting, okay? So the reason I'm bored with this painting is because the outcome has already been revealed to me. So I look at my paintings, because they're very intuitive and very free-flowing and all that, I actually can't wait until it's done or until I add the subject matter, the image in my case, because to me that's when the end of the story is revealed to me and I get excited about being there. The reason I'm bored already from the way I started yesterday against my own challenge was that I look at it and it's almost like a spoiler, right? Like someone's already told me what this painting's about, and now for me I'm bored about the outcome. So how does this translate into your own art is or your own creative measures, I should say, is that we have within us a set of methods, I guess, for accomplishing something. So I know I have my start, my middle, and then my end in my paintings, even though the paintings are very intuitive, and then at the end I'm like, wow, that's really great, I really like how that turned out, or I really like the end of that story, or maybe I didn't like that story so much, but or maybe sometimes it's a struggle to get to the end, or whatever that is. But what I'm learning about creativity is honoring what turns on or what activates within me that creative muse, I guess I'll just call it for that for now. So, and for me, because I'm deadened by the idea that the plot has already been revealed, the end of the story's already been revealed, I'm bored to that already. I don't want to continue with this painting, and hi Rhonda, I'm already bored by the outcome of this painting. So what I have to do today, Ornella, hello. So yeah, because I'm bored with this painting already, today I am going to ignore what I did yesterday, and I'm going to, so it's not that starting differently, because that was a challenge yesterday, was a bad thing. It's just that it didn't engage my creativity. It did a little bit here and there, but coming into it today, I already feel like I've just said, creativity, you can take today off, right? I'm not going to be surprised by you today, so I'm just going to go through the motions and finish this painting. And to me, boring. So I am going to honor the fact that I started differently yesterday. Maybe some parts of this will stay, and maybe some parts won't stay. That's all okay. Hey, Mark. That's okay. So what I want to know today is what you guys are doing to stay creative during this self-isolation time. So if you want to share anything in the comments, inspire each other maybe with just introducing yourself in the comments, and maybe even take a photo of what you're working on, or tell people what you do as an artist. Hi there. It's really nice to see everybody joining in the chat and the discussion. So make sure within your comments, it's lovely to see you all, but the purpose of these videos is to inspire each other and to let everyone know who you are, where you are in the world, and how you're fueling your creativity during this very bizarre, unprecedented time in our world. So I'm going to continue to paint, and maybe I'll comment throughout the whole thing, but I want you guys to share with me and share with others in the chat how it is you're feeding your creativity during this bizarre time. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to say goodbye to most of this painting, or I'm going to say goodbye to most of this painting because it's boring me, and maybe some of it will poke through, maybe it won't. I'm just spraying water on here because water is extremely corrosive to acrylic paintings, as anybody knows, who has ever painted with any thing, with any acrylics. So initially the water will bead off, which is great, but if I keep this wet, the water will actually really start to soak into this, and it's going to soften the paint so that I can get back down to the collage a little bit. One thing that I found just by starting differently is that I really miss my scratches. So I normally will, sorry for going off screen guys, I'm really not that technically savvy, so I'm working with a very bizarre little setup here, and it's very rudimentary, so every time I need to get something I have to turn behind me to do so. Anyway, so I'm going to get back to my scratches, because that's one thing that really helps guide my paintings. And it may not be for everyone, and it may look kind of weird, like why in the world is she doing scratches? But to me, this is the most free way I can be with my paintings, because I have so many layers already. Look at all these great things that get revealed, like little bits and pieces when I apply scratch marks. And so scratch marks to me create direction, they create a plan. So if anyone's ever looked at a map, and I'm sure you've all looked at a map, there's lines, right? Those lines aren't random. Those lines are telling you where you can walk, where you can take your car, where things are situated. It's a map. It's lines. It's direction. It's topographic. It's or not. And more than anything, if you need to go from this place to this place on a map, you would know, okay, I have to turn right, I have to go straight for a little while, I have to turn north, then I have to go east. Like, that's what we're using the lines for. So similarly to me, what happens when I start using my random lines, they're not all visible when the painting is done, but to me, I have a bit of direction, and I have a bit of a sense of guidance, if you will. And that's not revealed to me until I start to figure out where I want to go. So that's just a little glimpse into my process, which almost is a bit counterproductive even to me, because I'm thinking, where am I going with this? Because I just know that I just also like the carving, because that's really fun too. So I wouldn't have been able to really do that because my paint was technically cured had I not wet it and let that water kind of soak in. It also might not have been as exciting for me had I not done a whole bunch of collage underneath, which once I pull some areas up, reveal something more interesting than just the wood panel underneath. So yeah, it does seem slightly counterproductive, maybe. Really not counterintuitive. I wouldn't say that my work is counterintuitive because it's entirely intuitive in that I'm just going with whatever I feel like doing. And this process is me, right? Like, this is me. So even though I started this painting differently, I'm being guided to honor it in the same way that I always work on my paintings. So that's that. So that's kind of neat. So what I'm going to do now, I think, is maybe add some paint. See where that takes me. See, this elf doesn't really want to be here. It's like all grumbly, going, why in the world did you glue me in the first place? There we go. Okay, so that's kind of fun. So you know what? I think I'm going to use a bit more of my goo. So I always talk about this. I have this big vat of goo, and it's really just where I clean my brushes or where I have some paint and lots of water, and then I use it as a stain. But the reason I use this big vat of goo and have it all the time ready in my work is that if I scratch through to white paper, to me the white paper looks maybe jarring or a bit unfinished. And so by taking some of that raw paper that I've just exposed and giving it a bit of a color, or a bit of a non-color, if you will, it just, for me anyway, it doesn't look as jarring, and I don't have the look of like a messy or unfinished painting. So that is the purpose for this glue a lot of times. So now this glue that I have going can either stay or the glue can be removed. So if anyone was tuning into this earlier, one of my favorite tools in mixed media are baby wipes. So I just caught something on chat that someone is writing poetry. Now I missed who that was, but if you're not too shy, whoever you are, why don't you just share a little bit of what you consider to be like that sound bite, that more like even just a line or two lines or something from your poem. We would love to read it. Like this is, I'm not going to say it's a safe space because I have no idea. It's out in public, but be brave and just let us know what your creativity guided you to write. Yeah, even a few lines, one line, two lines, all we need to hear. So the world can use more of your creativity. Whoever you are, whatever it is you do, trust me when I say the world can use more of you being authentically you in your art form. So I've always kind of fought the idea, if you will, that art comes easily to me. And what that means is I've had so many students say to me, oh, but you make it look so easy, you make it look so easy. The reality is I make what I do look easy because it's what I do, it's my gift. To make art the exact way I make art. If I tried to make art like any one of you, because I've seen some other people who were in our chat, and I know that like Mark and Dulce, I know these are professional artists, and Susie Blue, they're all professional artists, and I can't do what they do. So I couldn't make, hey Pam, another artist. So I can't make what they do look easy. I can only make what I do look easy. So you all have within you that ability to make what you do look easy. So that's why I'm encouraging you, if you're trying something different, if you're maybe just, like I'm actually spending some time sewing these days, which is really interesting because I actually fight with my sewing machine. And what that means is that when I was really little, I'll tell you a little story here. So when I was really little, my grandmother was a seamstress, and I always thought it was really great that she could make something that, you know, wasn't there just hours before. And I always thought that was amazing. Like if you needed a blanket, she made a blanket, and it was a quilt. And I thought that that was really super cool. And I just loved the way she would put fabric together, like the squares to make a quilt. And my grandmother wasn't one of those quilters who spent hours top stitching and all that detail. She was actually making like functional pieces. Like I'm just gonna make a blanket because I need one. I need a pillowcase, therefore I'm gonna make one. So I thought it was really great that even in her functional pieces, there was always creativity, like which fabric she put together and things like that. And a lot of the times it would be like, oh, I remember that dress that she cut that piece out of and all that. And that was really cool to me, that there was somebody who's creating something and honoring a creativity and a skill at the same time. So I guess that's what we all have to discover within our own realm and not try to be like someone else, right? So remember, in the chats, share this. If anything rings true to you and you say, you know what, like I've forgotten how to honor my own creativity. I've tried so long to be somebody else, or whatever it is that may be brave. Be brave and tell us who you are and what you're doing and how you're honoring your creativity. And I know there's a lot of you out there who I have spoken with personally who have shared this with me before, that you've had epiphanies, you've had awakenings where you've realized that first and foremost, hey, look at that, I'm an artist. And then honoring that, that's a first big step. But now honoring the second part, or the third part, and the fourth part, and the fifth part, those things come daily as you have epiphanies about yourself as an artist and who you are. You know what? I'm losing track in my painting because I'm getting like all kinds of ideas, and I'm trying to grasp which one do I go with right now, because they're actually all seeming very exciting at this moment. Like I've got so many ideas, and yeah. Anyway, so have you guys? Reminds me of another story. I keep having all these little epiphanies to stories and reminders of stories, but Elizabeth Gilbert has a TED Talk about catching creativity, and if anybody hasn't watched it, I can add it into the comments later, but if anyone has watched it, just add it so that everyone can know what we're talking about. Elizabeth Gilbert is the author of Eat, Pray, Love and Big Magic, and she has a TED Talks that talks about creativity, and there's this one part that always stands out to me. If memory serves correct, because of course we always adjust things so that they suit our own needs, right? So if memory serves correct, she talks about how creativity comes when you sort of least expect it, or maybe it just comes and you have a responsibility to either catch it or let it go, right? Like catch and release or catch and eat kind of thing. That's my analogy, actually. I think that's a good one for anybody who fishes or whatever. So catch and release or catch and let go. And to me, all these ideas right now are coming flooding into my awareness, and within that awareness, I'm wondering right now, like, which ideas I should act on and which I shouldn't. So that's a really great skill set to have, to know which ideas to take and which ideas to let go. And I tell you, for those of you who are watching the beginning of this video, you heard me. I was bored to death with this painting already, and I was already setting myself up for a very boring experience of finishing this painting because I had to. And really crazy, I didn't expect the floodgates of creativity to open up as soon as I decided to let go of the outcome, right? So, okay, I'm gonna answer a question here. Margot says, hi, how can I reuse an already waxed panel? It's not working and I want to abandon it. Well, that's a great question. There's no short answer to that, because once we've waxed something, I'm assuming you've got, because I know Margot, she's been in a lot of my classes, so if you've got stuff under it, meaning chalk paint and collage and stuff like that, having the wax on the surface, I would say there's like probably, I don't know, there's probably an infinite number of ways you can actually continue it. My favorite way, ready for this? My favorite way is to add more to it. So most people's instinct is to remove. I'm going to take the wax off and I'm going to start over. Or an acrylic painting or an oil painting, I'm going to gesso over it and start over. And I always say that a painting that is speaking to you so loudly saying this is not right, all it's really telling you is this is not finished. So if this is not finished, similarly to what I'm doing today, how can you, in this case, stably keep working on the painting without abandoning what's already there? So the fact that I already had these papers underneath and these colors popping through, if I had gessoed over the whole thing and said, you know what, I was wrong, I'm going to start the way I always start, I wouldn't have had all this great creativity and inspiration jumping out at me. So, like I told you, I'm just fighting off the ideas right now because I have so many ideas of where to go with this. And I just have to now start to pick which ones are good and which ones I'm going to honor and which ones I'm not going to, because I have a lot of ideas on what's next. In fact, it's like coming at me from everywhere, like going, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'm like, look at all these possibilities. So in the case of a waxed panel, one of my favorite things, now keep in mind, I am not afraid to lose anything in my painting. That means that I don't have any precious areas, okay? When we have, my opinion, when we have a precious area that we're like, I'm gonna change everything except for this one thing, I think we've crippled ourselves right at that point by saying, I'm changing everything except for that. That, to me, it's like, how free can you be, and how many ideas do you think you can catch if you've already set limitations on what the outcome can be? Okay, that was a lot to digest, but follow me here. If we're willing to just say nothing is precious, and yet everything is precious, right? If we're willing to just let go of the certain areas that, yeah, they looked great, then the whole thing becomes a new opportunity. Okay, so in the case of the wax, if you've already got a lot of wax on it, if it's colored or clear or whatever, if it's clear, easy, 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 easy. You can still add colored waxes, iron, fuse, do whatever, because when you add colored waxes on top of your, and I'm not talking pen pastels, I'm talking about the actual colored waxes. If you were to blend some colored waxes in there and then over fuse and watch them sort of blend and move, they'll react with the clear wax, and then they might hide some things underneath, and they might reveal some things underneath that were before kind of hidden in plain sight. So if you have wax, I tend to stay with wax. I'll post something later, Margot, in the comments, some pictures. I'll do before and after, because I had these paintings that I think they might have even been hanging in a gallery at one point, and they just never felt right. I think they might have had like 10 incarnations, and I was like, these paintings are just not working. And then, but because I had wax on them, I was really struggling with, how am I going to tweak these enough that they become interesting or sellable or anything. And it wasn't until I just said, I'm willing to let everything go and just see what happens, that I hit this technique where I just went, I added more wax and colored wax. And then I fused it, and I would overfuse it, and I would let the colors swirl and blend together, just like watching an acrylic pour. And parts were from beneath were being exposed, and then other parts were being covered up. And I was watching this whole thing happen, and I just couldn't stop. I kept adding more paint and more paint and more paint. And at the end of the day, I added a transfer, again, of a bird. And these paintings to me are now like, it's funny because I've posted little glimpses of them here or there on social media, and I've actually had offers to buy them, which is really interesting to me, because before, right, they were never right. They flew around my studio for years, and I actually mean years, that I had those paintings, and I just kept doing minor tweaks, minor changes, minor this, minor that. And it wasn't until I was ready to just say, nothing is precious in this anymore. It was wonderful, and I have lots of great little areas going on, but it is what it is. I'm willing to just declare it not finished. So I hope that helps, Margot, but I will put that in the comments afterwards, the two, I think I might have a before picture. If not, just imagine a picture which looks entirely different, and then afterwards it was something entirely different. So hi there for everybody who's just joining us. I am struggling right now with too many ideas. So as I'm talking to you, I have these little creative muses that are telling me, do this, do this, do this. And I know that sounds a little trivial to many of you, but I am very much an intuitive painter, and I do what my muses tell me. So anyway, so my muses right now are telling me, would you get gluing? Would you get painting? We've got work to do here. So this painting was not at all exciting to me until about, I don't know, 10 minutes ago, when the notion of trying to save this image just, I don't know, just came to me like, stop trying to save this image. And I went, okay, it's time to stop trying to save that image. And now I'm like completely free to just add more things and to pull out the paint and see what happens next. So I've been entirely intrigued with the idea of, I keep flipping this painting, but I'm really thinking I'm still quite set on this direction. So I think for now, I'm going to go with this direction, and before I get too light with my paint, I'm actually going to add a layer of depth. So for those of you unfamiliar with the way I work in layers and upon layers upon layers upon layers, and of really unguided steps or layers. I couldn't write a book on this subject because I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just following my instincts. And so at this point, I'm sort of being guided to add a layer of dark so that when I add some lightness to it, the dark can actually peek its way through. All right, so some darkness. Where is the darkness going to go? So I have in here a lot of lines that I've already carved in, and I think I'm going to just follow some of those lines and step back and see what happens. I'm going to add a little bit of water. My paint's just a wee bit thick. So I'm painting with a chalk-based paint, and clay-based paints. And so the reason for that is that I am going to transition this painting, not transition, that's a wrong word, because I'm actually feeling like I'm not going to transition anything. I'm going to add some encaustic wax afterwards, and so that this painting will be a mixed media painting with an encaustic layer on it. And to honor that encaustic layer, I need to make sure that the foundation is stable and readily able to receive encaustic wax, because encaustic wax does not like to stick to acrylic foundations. So that's why I use chalk-based and clay-based paints, because they either have no, this question came to me yesterday, they either have no acrylic in them or latex in them, or they have very little. So it's the properties of the paint more so than the additives of the paint. So acrylic and latex, and in higher concentrations of those two things within the paint, the wax will repel itself from that. So if that makes sense to any of you, that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to use paints that will complement and will let the wax adhere to it. I apologize for my my train of thought today. Like I said, I am absolutely flooded with ideas, and it's hard when you're painting live, because I feel like I'm listening to like a whole chorus of people here, and speak at the same time. So keeping a train of thought going is becoming very challenging. So I hope you're all sharing in the comments with one another what it is you're working on, who you are, where you live, what you do, for artistic and creative outlets. Question, was that black paint or ink you added with the dropper? With with the dropper. Oh, with this. So these, maybe they look like droppers, but these are actually just what I transfer my chalk paint and any paint that's in a can, because the more you open that can, the more oxygen gets in and the drier the paint gets, and it's really hard for those paints to stay liquid. So what I do is I just transfer them to squeeze bottles, and I can show you here. I keep all my paints in squeeze bottles, ones that I buy in cans, for the purpose of being able to keep them fresher longer. That's really about it. So great question. It is chalk paint, or it might be a clay-based paint. So I often use, or I used to only use chalk-based paints. That was in my, if any of you have read my book, Two Worlds Collide, which is available on Amazon, by the way, as an e-print, and I'm the only one who sells the actual print copy of it. But it's a very small little book, just into the process. But the process that I had developed was initially only using chalk paints. And there we go. It was only using chalk paints. And then I discovered clay-based paints, which is really interesting because clay-based paints are even more fascinating to me because they have better, I don't even know what the word is here. They accept the wax much better. That's a great word. So they accept the wax much better, and they also sorry, the words are eluding me today. So they accept the wax much better. They cover much better. They have a lot more interesting or appealing qualities, I guess, to my process. The drawback, everything great, you know, there's always something bad about it. The drawback is that they dry out extremely quickly and they're expensive. So if you're using a clay-based paint, then because there is no acrylic in them, like in the brands that I've used, they dry out really, really quickly. So I have to transfer things to a squeeze bottle in order to protect my investment, really, because it can get quite expensive if you're working with something that is drying up, and then you have to buy more each time. Now there's this little nozzle has become clogged. That's also the problem with chalk paints and clay-based paints, is that they clog the nozzles, so I actually have to throw that nozzle into some water and then just clean it out. But for now, I'll just pour a little bit on my palette and I'll keep painting. So for those of you who are quite shocked at the transformation already of this painting, don't be. To me, it's part of the process, and it feels so much better to have let go of what I was trying so desperately before to protect and to make into something that it wasn't ever really going to be. And what that would be an intuitive painting, right? So what I'm going for in my art is that ability to create a piece while being excited at the process of making it. So I know that's what a lot of you have been telling me you long for in your art. I wrote about it in a blog post that I wrote. It's on my own website at ChristinaLovisa.com. Go to the blog and you can read about my thoughts on developing creative habits. But I can tell you in a nutshell that one of the main habits that I encourage you all to participate in is disciplined art making. And that's just when you actually schedule time every day to do something creative. And to me, that's what engages our creativity. That's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it going. So there we go. I just feel like I want a little drip there. Maybe spray it a little bit. Oh, lovely. Okay, actually, while I've got that going, I think I want to make that also go down into there a little bit. Okay, so this is feeling much more interesting to me because I feel like I'm actually responding to something. Before, when I was planning so much, there was no response. Is Van Gogh clay-based? No. So Van Gogh paint is actually a chalk-based paint. They actually call it a fossil paint because of a legal issue with by calling it a chalk paint. So the big tyrant company in the world that owns the trademark chalk paint has sued other companies and told them they can't use the word chalk. So Van Gogh has gone ahead and had to remove the name chalk from their paint, even though they're adding chalk. So chalk is a mineral, which is actually fossil based, so they just call it fossil paint. So a lot of times you'll hear them called fossil paints, or most of the times it's mineral paints. Sometimes now you'll see chalky finish, or you'll see chalk based, or you'll see these words, but to actually call something a chalk paint that's been trademarked, so you're not allowed to say that anymore. Clay-based paints, there's a brand that I use that I think it might be made in like Southern Ontario somewhere, maybe Kitchener. I have to look this up again, because before the world turned upside down, I had engaged in conversation with this company called Aspire, A-S-P-I-R-E, and I'm not sure where they distribute their paints to, but I have bought it locally, and it is by far one of my favorite paints. I really love it. And Aspire, if you're watching or listening, we need to be in touch because I love your paint, and I really think we could do great things with it. A lot of the issues with these companies that create these paints is right now they've pigeonholed themselves into furniture and cupboard refinishing tool, and I don't think that they understand the potential in translating it into a fine art medium. So yeah, they need to get on that, because it really can actually be a very beneficial fine art medium to those of us who see the benefit in using paint that doesn't have any acrylic or any plastics in it. Okay, so that's my little thing about that. The other one that I like to use is very commercially available, and it's called, now it's going to escape me. Okay, so Aspire is, I think, from Southern Ontario, maybe from Kitchener, and the other one is called, oh come on, it's a big name. It's a big name. It's available in, oh lordy, what is it called? Okay, it'll come to me. Okay, I have too many ideas going on in my head right now. Too many thoughts to keep straight. And I need to keep painting. So, Farrow and Ball. There we go. So Farrow and Ball makes a clay-based paint. It's made in England, so it's not cheap. But then again, none of these paints are really cheap, right? So, and how many of you could say that you work in a medium where your art supplies are super cheap? So it's not cheap, but that's not the point. The point really is that we have a medium or a material that's not going to dry up. So first thing I do to mitigate that is I pour things into smaller bottles and containers and get them out of these cans, right? Because the cans, like, they're hard to seal, and then they get all dried and goopy, and the paint gets really thick. So that's a waste of money. But Farrow and Ball also has these new tester size cans. They're about this big, and you're sweet, Sophie. So they're totally a great material to work with, and these new tester size to me is worth the money. because a little dabble do you, you'll get to learn the colors that you use more of, so you can buy bigger cans. And then the benefit of buying Faro and Ball paint is that if you buy a little tester and you use like a little bit of this color and a little bit of that color, sure, they're expensive, but if you use a lot of something, like I use more white than I know what to do with, I can actually buy like the big can, right? So it's not even just like those little medium pint cans. It's actually the big can that you use for painting your walls. So yeah, that's a little just material preference information for you, I guess. So what I've done was I'm using my baby wipes now to go back in and pull some of this paint back, but I've also sprayed some of it with water, and the purpose for that, if you guys are paying attention, is that water, super corrosive to paint. Even paint that's cured, it just eats right through it. So because this paint definitely hasn't cured, I just painted this 5 minutes ago, it's lifting quite easily. And so I'm just actually being more careful now not to remove it all, because I do like the definition that the staining in certain areas has given this painting. And I'm actually curious, like when I'm done removing this paint, to step back and actually see if the shape that I randomly followed starts speaking to me, because that, to me, like, that's exciting. It's like Christmas. I get to open up the present by standing back and seeing what the gift was. And those of you who know my art, I don't even know what to call it. I'm gonna have to come up with a term for it, because in furniture, one would say I love shabby chic, because I like that distressed but pretty look. But in my art, I have a certain grunge appeal that is not graffiti necessarily, but it definitely has a grunge appeal, and sometimes I feel like I have to tame that a little bit for my audience, because maybe I think that people don't necessarily want to hang dirty things on their walls. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe they do. But I'm always a little conscious of that. And every artist has their insecurities, right? And one of mine is definitely, is it too dirty? Is it too much? But, you know, whatever. At a certain point, I always tell myself, no, you know what? You just have to live with it. And whoever buys it's just going to have to live with it. But I'm loving the structure. Like, I call this the structure of the painting, even though it has very little structure right now. It has a lot of structure in the potential, right? Like, what could I turn this into? I have no idea. It's like, it's otherworldly. It really is. It's like nothing we perceive as normal or as recognizable, I guess, more than anything. So a lot of times people will say to me, oh, I see a flower, or oh, I see a landscape, or oh, I see whatever. It's always interesting to me what people will read into my artwork, their own artwork, anything. I think when your work is deliberately representational, it should look like that which you intended it to look like. But in my case, I didn't really have any intention for it to look like anything, and therefore, mission accomplished. I give you nothing, right? Behold. Wow. Yeah, I'm actually really excited by this. Like, I don't even know where this is going. I don't know anything, but I can tell you the things that I'm excited about. I love the contrast that's happening in here, even though you can't really tell what that image was. I love that there's still bits and pieces of it showing. It's almost like imagine like remnants that are pulled out of a fire, right? What is, thanks Terry. I can always count on Terry because Terry always tells me that nothing is too grungy. And thank you very much. I really appreciate that because Terry also appreciates decay and grunge and rust and scratches and marks and that sort of thing. So I feel like I have a camaraderie in Terry in that she can always be my cheerleader by saying, no, it's great. So thank you, Terry. I really don't say this often enough, but I really appreciate that that you and I see things similarly, I guess is a good way of putting it. When people see things and agree with you the way you see them, you always feel a little bit of validation, right? So, and the purpose of these videos, again, remember, is we're not seeking outward validation. We're looking for our own validation. And so, because I'm actually super excited about this painting now, it doesn't mean that it's finished by any stretch, but now I'm actually really excited to return to it tomorrow, and because the potential feels really huge at this point to me. So what I was pointing out, the things I love the contrast. So down here, I'm going to bring the camera up closer so you guys can see it. So let me turn that around. So down here, you can see this contrast area. Let me get all my stuff out of the way. So the dark, the white, the dark, and then all the scratches and the marks in between, which are kind of like the mid-tone. I love that. I love these little areas of color peeking through. That was from that collage stuff that came through. I love the little bits of text that are coming through from my first layer. Let's go up here. Not done, but it's got potential. It's cool. More marks. This interesting area to me has got a lot going on. It's like layers and layers and layers of decay. It might even be just a teeny bit much for me, so I will tame that with some paint tomorrow. But yeah, so looking back at it, I'll try and get a better view head on. Maybe I'll stand back a little bit and see if I can get that. There. So it's a weird angle, but yeah, so you can see it's got lots of potential. It actually feels to me a little like in here, a little Tim Burton-esque, which is really interesting because I definitely label Tim Burton as one of my favorite artists. He is incredible, and that man's imagination and creativity is off the charts, in my opinion. So let's come back to this tomorrow with fresh eyes. I'm excited to come back to it. I've created lots of muddy areas, but at the same time, I've got lots of interesting areas of high and low contrast, like the value contrast, the light and the dark. And to me, that's what keeps a painting exciting. You know that when I've taught some of you, and I say the whole thing's gotten to be too mid-tone or too monotone, it's because the whole thing has become monochromatic. It's become sort of one value, right? It's neither light nor dark, or it's all dark or it's all light. And we really do need that value if we are looking at any type of painting. We do need that contrast between light and dark. Even in very subtle amounts, you do need value change because that is what keeps us looking into a painting. Okay, so everybody, thank you so much for watching and participating today. I can't wait to go home and read all the comments and see how you've been interacting with one another. And if you love your fellow artists, make sure you share this with them so that they can find some inspiration and some creative time in this bizarre times we find ourselves in right now. If art saves, then you know what? By sharing it, you could be helping someone else get out of a funk or a rut and help themselves find some creativity in this time. Okay, bye everybody.